people off with what Six Flags they're flying at theme park now. And another blatant attempt to cater to the far-left terrorists, Six Flags Over Texas theme park has reversed their decision to fly the Confederate States of America flag at the display over the park entrance. Although park management had originally decided to keep the flag flying, they released a statement Friday explaining their wimpish decision to remove the flag. The statement released explained that the park is about having fun and celebrating the things that unite us, not things that divide us. The Arlington theme park was named for the Six Flags that have flown over the state of Texas throughout its history. The Confederate flag has always been one of those Six Flags. Park officials had previously stated that they saw a fundamental difference between the flag they fly and the Confederate battle flag. Six Flags management falsely claimed that white supremacists and neo-Nazis adopted the battle flag, not the original Confederate flag which they fly at the park. However, the truth is both flags flew during the Civil War. During the Civil War the Southern Cross Confederate flag replaced the original design because it was said to cause confusion on the battlefield because of how similar it is to the Union flag. Because of this, Confederate generals petitioned for a new flag, which led to the Confederate battle flag most are familiar with today, which is actually the Southern Cross design. Confederate history. Myth: the Confederate battle flag was flown on slave ships. Fact: none of the flags of the Confederacy or Southern nation ever flew over a slave ship. Nor did the South own or operate any slave ships. The English, the Dutch and the Portuguese brought slaves to this country, not the Southern nation. But, even more monumental, it is also very important to know and understand that Federal, Yankee, Union ships brought slaves to America. These ships were from the New England states, and their hypocrisy is atrocious. These Federals were ones that ended up crying the loudest about slavery. But without their ships, many of the slaves would have never arrived here. They made countless fortunes on the delivery of slaves as well as the products made from raw materials such as cotton and tobacco in the South. This is the problem with Yankee history. History is overwhelmingly portrayed incorrectly by most of the Federal and Yankee books and media. Myth: the Confederate battle flag represented the Southern nation. Fact: not true. While the Southern battle flag was carried into battle, the Southern nation had three different national flags during the course of the war. The first national flag was changed due to a resemblance of the U.S. flag. The second national flag was subsequently modified due to the similarity to a flag of truce. The third national flag was the adopted flag of the Confederacy. The Confederate battle flag was never a national flag of the Confederacy. It was carried into battle by several armies such as the Army of Northern Virginia and the Army of Tennessee. Was also used as a naval jack by the Confederate Navy. Myth: the Confederate battle flag is known as the Stars and Bars. Fact: a common misconception. The first national Confederate flag is correctly known as the Stars and Bars. The Confederate battle flag is known as the Southern Cross. Myth: the Confederate battle flag represents racism today. Fact: the Confederate battle flag today finds itself in the center of much controversy and hoopla going on in several states. The cry to take this flag down is unjustified. It is very important to keep in mind that the Confederate battle flag was simply just that. A battle flag. It was never even a national flag, so how could it have flown over a slave nation or represented slavery or racism? This myth is continued by lack of education and ignorance. Those that vilify the Confederate battle flag are very confused about history and have jumped upon a bandwagon with loose wheels. Myth: the United States flag represented freedom. Fact: no chance. The U.S. flag flew over a slave nation for over 85 years. The North tolerated slavery and acknowledged it as a division of labor. The North made a vast fortune on slavery and its commodities. It wasn't until the South decided to leave the Union that the North objected. The North knew it could not survive without the Southern money. That is the true definition of hypocrisy. Myth: Abraham Lincoln was the great emancipator. Fact: while Lincoln has went down in history as the great emancipator, many would not care to hear his real thoughts on people of color. Martyred President Abraham Lincoln was fervently making plans to send all freed slaves to the jungles of Central America once the war was over. Knowing that African society would never allow the slaves to return back to Africa, Lincoln also did not want the slaves in the U.S. He thought the jungles of Central America would be the best solution and conducive to the freed slaves' best interest. The only thing that kept this from happening was his assassination. Myth: the South revered slavery. Fact: a very interesting fact on slavery is that at the time the War of 1861–1865 officially commenced, the Southern states were actually in the process of freeing all slaves in the South. Russia had freed its servants in 1859, and the South took great note of this. Had military intervention not been forced upon the South, a very different America would have been realized then as well as now. Myth: the Confederate Army was comprised of rich slave owners. Fact: very far from true. The vast majority of soldiers in the Confederate Army were simple men of meager income, most of which were hard-working farmers and common men. Then, as now, very few rich men ever fight a war. Myth: only the North had men of color in their ranks. Fact: quite simply a major falsehood of history. Many blacks, both free and of their own will, joined the Confederate Army to fight for their beloved Southern home. Additionally, men of other ethnic extraction fought as well. Oriental, Mexican and Spanish men as well as Native American Indians fought with pride for the South. Today, many men of color are members in the heritage group SCV, Sons of Confederate Veterans. These men of color and pride rejoice in their heritage. The continued attacks on the Southern nation, the Confederacy, and her symbols are a terrible outrage to these fine people. These attacks should be denounced with as much fervor as those who denounced the South. Myth: the Confederate flags are an authorized symbol of Aryan, KKK and hate groups. Fact: quite the contrary. These despicable organizations such as the KKK and Aryans have taken a hallowed piece of history, and have plagued good Southern folks and the memories of fine Confederate soldiers that fought under the flag with their perverse agenda. In no way does the Confederate flag represent hate or violence. Heritage groups such as the SCV battle daily the damage done to a proud nation by these hate groups. The SCV denounces all hate groups, and pridefully boasts heritage, not hate. Myth: the SCV, Sons of Confederate Veterans are a racist, hate group. Fact: this is a blatant attack on one of the finest heritage groups ever. The SCV, Sons of Confederate Veterans are a historical, patriotic and non-political organization comprised of descendants of Confederate soldiers and sailors dedicated to ensuring that a true history of the 1861–1865 period is preserved and presented to the public. The SCV continues to educate the public of the memory and reputation of the Confederate soldier as well as the motives for his suffering and sacrifice. The SCV, Sons of Confederate Veterans are in no way affiliated with, nor does it recognize or condone the terrible legacy of hate groups such as the KKK. Time for some truths. No one was ever offended by this flag until the George Soros media told us to be offended. Most of us Jenksers even grew up with it on one of the most popular TV shows of the late 70s and early 80s and no one ever cared. The Confederate flag has a long proud history, but now we will be able to add one more fact to that history. The time the flag was used by the globalists to further divide the American people so they can conquer us. Taking that into consideration, maybe in 20 years, the rebel flag will offend me too. Thank you for watching this video. What do you think about this? Share this on Facebook and Twitter along with your comments.